The first one is just a new data point on anything. And I'm going to give examples here in just a second. So you're going to add to your existing body of knowledge. And the second one, and this is like the first one is first half of life, but this second thing is a second half of life thing. You're going to share something. You're going to focus on something that you've learned to do, an application of the knowledge. I've said for a long time, knowledge is not power. The applied knowledge is power, or your applied knowledge is power. So many people know what to do, but they fail in their efforts to apply their alleged knowledge. For example, parents know they should not constantly criticize or complain or scold or restrict or yell at their kids, right? But after dozens of failed attempts to teach their children, they resort to the very behavior they disliked as children, so they become their parents. So we'll give examples now in the category of simply adding a data point of knowledge. So, Sherry, would you be good enough just to read a couple of those?
Okay, so this is under IQ, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. These are examples of journal entries from some of your clients. Learned about non-insulin meds for diabetes. That was somebody's entry.
Right. And just by context, she's at the time was studying to be an RN. She is now.
Okay. So not necessarily a diabetic, but a nurse. So she's learning
right.
something she learned. Okay. Another person was learned about girls lacrosse. I learned that some insurance policies cover having a gas can brought to you if you run out of gas.
So that was a client who had an experience.
Simply, you could get an insurance policy that will deliver you a gas can. Yeah, I don't think mine does that. I learned about the operational logistics of our risk investment strategy.
You can see all the different people and what they do in their lives right now.
Wherever they're at.
Yeah.
I learned how to throw an axe properly. Now, that gets really interesting.
I remember that one.
Yeah. I learned how to make soda bread.
So I'm picturing these. I remember these entries coming in. And by the way, these became really cool talking points.
Yeah.
And if you want to know how to make a friend, learn how to talk to somebody. Learn how to have a communication with them that's open, that you're going to find out about them. All right.
But what I love about this is that by just creating the data point, you're valuing your experiences.
And you're aware of them.
And so, in a way, you're framing the simplest thing, like learning how to make soda bread, as a positivity in your life instead of my life is negative, I'm depressed, blah, blah, blah. You're seeing every little experience as a positive.
You've heard the term learned helplessness.
Oh, yeah.
There's a term, I've never heard anyone say it, but it's learned cluelessness. Just not to be aware. Mm-hmm. You go through life and you have no recollection of what you just experienced. There's no context to it. There's no meaning to it. There's no depth to it. You simply were there, your body, but that might have been the only thing that was there. It's a dissociated way of going through life. Okay, so as you mature in this process, your data points are neural path deepeners. In other words, how will you apply the knowledge? So let's go over the next couple of examples.
Okay. I learned how to de-escalate my teenager through the connect redirect process.
Now that would be kind of substantial.
Yeah.
In other words, here's an example. I have stories that I could tell about people who, let's just say husband and wife, who are really struggling. And the one party decides to stop coming in. This isn't therapy, keep in mind, because they have things to do. There's goals and there's homework constantly. In other words, we're going to get from A to B, not in a venting, looping position, but in what are you going to do to change the mindset? In other words, learn how to change. And they will say, I don't need to go see Dr. Himmer. I already know what he's going to say. Now, that's the first half of life knowledge, not second half of life knowledge. Just because you know how to articulate. There are many clients I have who are smarter than I am. They can quote all the stuff
Really?
that I've read. Oh,
there are people smarter than you?
That's called sarcasm, just in case you were wondering. But they can't apply the stuff that they've learned. They're self-help junkies, not lifelong learners. And so this is becoming the lifelong learner aspect. So let's do another one.
I learned how to keep neutrality in a conversation with my in-laws.
I never did learn that.
I learned how to negotiate using Jedi mind magic.
And that's a communication technique, right, that we teach here.
I learned how to create trust and respect with my prospects before business is conducted.
That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, you can see like these
Yeah.
are things, if you are recognizing you're learning them, you're going to find some great success, some great ways to really improve your life. I learned how to deepen my love, emotional intimacy with my spouse by holding trust and respect conversations on our dates.
I've had some really fun stories where, because I don't recommend that, for example, a husband automatically go to a wife and try the new material. So, but if they tell them, like what I did with you years and years ago, and I said, I'm going to try to do something, Sherry. I'm going to try to talk to you about your family and be neutral at the same time.
Yeah, it's great to say, okay, I'm experimenting with new skills I'm trying.
Right. And so work
That
with
people,
me on that.
Yeah, are going to give you a little more grace.
And this one came from a gentleman. He actually walked up to me. I was out of state doing some training, and he says, Dr. Himmer, I tried it last night. I told my wife what I was going to be doing. This is a fairly big sized man. And then he started crying. And he says, it was the most amazing experience I've ever had with my wife, just talking to her and not having to solve everything or opine or tell her what I think. I just listened to her position, and the energy between us was significantly different. So I think that was pretty cool. All right. So these bullet points that we've just outlined are the beginnings of neural pathways that our habits develop through deliberate practice. The habit creates the habitat. In other words, by doing it over and over again, it creates a neural pathway on which to travel. And there's your, for lack of a better word, the foxhole, the container, the environment,
right,
or habitat. They're all the same thing. It's this world you live in that's lined with principles. And that's how you're going to go from first half of life to second half of life. And in upcoming segments, especially in the next 2 or 3, we're really going to do our best to develop this idea of moving from the first half of life to second half of life with these kinds of principles that you're going to live by. Okay, so let's move into the emotional intelligence side. We won't finish everything today, but we want to just get this part down. So in this emotional intelligence section, you're going to focus on increasing your self-awareness of actual words that you say or others say, behaviors, body language, intentions, underground truths, false narratives, or what we call shadows, cognitive distortions, so you'll need to know what those are, empathetic listening, which is powerful, so you'll need to know what that is, and then learning how to ask neutral questions. By the way, that is the one that I'm getting the most recently, learning how to ask neutral questions. And so it's fun to see people really struggling. How do I stay neutral in this scenario? How do I stay neutral with my clients, with my coworkers, with my husband or wife? So I usually recommend using the first 4 unsolicited behaviors in the rules of engagement to start with. In other words, no criticism, no sarcasm, no judging, and no relating. So here's how I suggest them do it. Just get up in the morning, and in your mind's eye, you start with the idea that you're going to be neutral. Now pay attention to what's going on, and only pay attention or listen for, or do your best to listen for, when someone offers a criticism, just pay attention to it. Don't judge it. Don't judge the person. Just give it a name. Oh, that was unsolicited criticism. Oh, that was sarcasm. And they're almost always unsolicited. Oh, that was judging, right? Or, oh, that's relating. And then you move from not just paying attention, but how does it feel? What's going on in the space? So let's go over a couple of observations and I have 3 steps in this, by the way, on how you can do this. So let's do step 1, Sherry, if you would do it.
The goal is to observe conversations and notice what's going on by giving the behavior or trait a name. Do not judge the person, only give a name to the behavior. So these are things going on in your day, and you're going to start noticing because you're raising your emotional intelligence.
Right, exactly right.
So here's an example. I noticed that when my supervisor does drive-by criticism, it dampens the energy in the person he criticizes.
So that means they're noticing the energy, not just that it was criticism.
I noticed that constructive criticism isn't constructive.
And that was interesting because remember, construction or constructive builds up, criticism tears down. We have an oxymoron. There really is no such thing as constructive criticism. If anyone ever says, hey, can I offer you some constructive criticism? Just get rid of the constructive and just say, okay, so what you're really saying is you want to offer criticism. Because I didn't ask you for the criticism. So if you ask, then that means someone's giving you feedback. It's not criticism.
Yeah.
Okay.
I noticed that everyone was relating and one-upping during the company social.
That person was pretty angry at the end of that week in our conversation because they had never seen it before, right?
Yeah, before you're just used to relatings everywhere in the world, and now it's like, oh wait, I know this is harmful and it's everywhere. I noticed that Bill is usually in the me pyramid, trying to get everyone to agree that he's right.
And then I noticed that Sally is very manipulative in leading with her questions. Now, that's step one. Because of the time left, let's just go quickly through step 2 and 3, and then we'll pick up advocate and gratitude in the next one. So,
observe the behavior in yourself. I notice when I relate, it shuts the other person down. So before they were just like, I'm in the world, what do I see? And now we're getting introspective.
Correct.
I notice that when I'm quick to solve a problem, it frustrates my wife, children, coworker, or direct report.
I've seen them all. In other words, as soon as you start, and this is where you and I really hit a tipping point when I figured out that I'm here to listen, not to solve. That was big for us.
I noticed that when I listen to understand instead of solving, the other person can often find a solution. So I love this because now they're noticing positive things about their emotional intelligence.
This next one was a tipping point for this person.
I noticed that when I ask questions before I give my opinion, I often find that I don't fully understand the situation. Now empathy is happening.
Because we're talking so much, we don't actually stop to hear what's going on. All right, let's do the last step and then finishing up. So observe the body language and the energy in conversations when someone engages in the unsolicited behaviors. So these are examples from one client.
I notice how easy it is to make simple, quick judgments about patients and their families that are completely off base.
That goes to that last one. I don't understand the situation.
Yeah. I became aware of how my kids react when I discipline calm versus discipline elevated or escalated.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that adults complain as much as children and with no shame. Maybe more. I noticed my tendency to feel in crisis and view things out of proportion when stressed. I noticed how quickly my emotions change from frustration to calm when I take a moment to be grateful.
Thanks so much for listening today.
Great start to the Awareness Journal. We got halfway through what it really means to work it.
Right. So we look forward to talking to you in the next one. Remember, you're responsible for what's happening in your life. It's not your fault that you might have challenges, but it's perfect. It's exactly what you need at that time to grow closer to integration or God. We look forward to talking to you in the next segment.
Inside my head, I try to turn it down, but I can't quite drown it out. I'm tortured every day, these never-ending worries.